Welcome. My name is Jenny Kwan. I'm the Member of Parliament for Vancouver East, and we're here today with our press conference to talk about a very important issue, and that is to call on the government to declare December 13th as Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day every year. Before I get into the issue, let me introduce the people that are standing with me on this stage, and they will be speaking as well. And in no particular order, I'm just going to introduce each of them. We have Joy Kogawa standing right here, who's an Order of Canada recipient, and joining us today we have Dr. Tomo Otsuki, who is over here, and she is in fact standing in for Satoko Norimatsu, who unfortunately could not join us today because her mother fell ill suddenly in Japan and she's had to fly home. And so I'm very grateful for Dr. Otsuki to stand in, and she's representing the group called Japanese Canadians in support of Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day. We have then Dr. Joseph Wong, who is Canada Alpha, standing over here as well. David Choi representing NCCC, and then last but not least we have Jerry He, who is a family member all the way from Halifax, and to share his experience as well. After which we will then have a presentation of the petitions. So today we're gathered here to talk about a very important issue. An important issue, why? Because it's one of the most horrific atrocities that happened in the globe. One that many people actually, in fact, don't know very much about. This is the Nanjing Massacre. This year marks the 81st anniversary of the Nanjing Massacre. During that period, over 300,000 people were killed, and it was estimated that some 200,000 women were forced or coerced or tricked into sexual slavery from those that were occupied by the Japanese Imperial Army in the Asian territories. Why are we talking about this? People say to me, why is this important 81 years later? Well, this is important because in today's world, in today's context, according to the UN, some 19 countries today utilizes sexual violence as a military tactic. We know that it happens to the city women we have in the House of Commons who've spoken about their tragedies. That is happening today. And the importance about history, for me, is this, is what we learn from it. What can we learn from that history, and how do we prevent it from happening again? That, to me, is the essence of history. Those lessons must be applied in today's context, and of course to also say to the family members, to the victims, the people who suffered during this time, to say to them that we acknowledge and recognize their sufferings, that it would not be ignored, that together as a global community, that we stand with each other, and that above all else, humanity has to prevail. That is why I am here today calling on the government to declare December 13th as Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day each year, so that those lessons could be learned, could be heartfelt, could be remembered, and most important of all, say to the families that we remember you, that we honor you for your sufferings, and for the future and for the generations to come. Let's connect and unite together and do everything that we can to prevent this kind of atrocity, this kind of crimes against humanity from ever happening again. So with that, my friends, I'm going to ask Joy Kogawa, who is a Order of Canada recipient, who's also recognized by the Japanese government and was awarded the Order of the Rising Sun.
I'm honored to be here by Jenny Kwan for asking to speak. I'll begin with this. Historical truth matters. It matters particularly intensely in times when history is put on trial by revisionists. Humanity is one. We are each part of our common lot, our humanity and our lack of humanity. We must know this. We must know who we humans are, what we have done, and what we are still capable of doing. Jenny Kwan, from within her responsibility to her community, is bringing us to awareness and to remembering. Where do we stand? If there is one thing history teaches us, it's that bystanders and perpetrators are on the same side. She is challenging us to join her and to take action. I believe we need to do so for the sake of historical knowledge and for the sake of Canada's moral stance. The world hungers and thirsts for moral leadership. Our country, thanks in large part to our literate and educated populace, has demonstrated this both within our communities and by leaders in our government. What was particularly memorable for me was the moral leadership shown in Parliament on September 22, 1988. On that day, healing and reconciliation reverberated throughout our country when Canada acknowledged that we had done wrong to Japanese Canadians. I'm deeply proud that the land of my birth had the moral fortitude to admit past injustice. And I am humbled by the support Japanese Canadians received as Asian Canadians stood together as one with us in our struggle and in celebration. That is one reason I am here as a Japanese Canadian to support Jenny Kwan and to thank those who stood with Japanese Canadians as we labored to have our story known. I long for the land of my parents' birth to follow Canada's model in acknowledging its wrongs by a country-wide government decree. Large-scale atrocities in every part of the globe must be known deeply and thoroughly by the whole world to assist us all in our efforts to prevent them from happening again. The story of Nanjing 1937 is just one of the horrors in Asia that remain largely untold. Many, many thousands died in Nanking, but according to historians, 20 million in Asia died at the hands of Japanese imperial forces, an unthinkable catastrophe. When the time comes that the courageous people in Japan speaking truth to power are finally heard, when the long overdue outpouring of grief arrives across the land, when Japanese children are taught their history in their home country, in that future time, the unbearable burden of shameful denial will begin to lift. Truth and reconciliation will join hands, and moral strength and honor will begin to be restored to the country of my parents' birth. I long for that day, and trust that it will arrive sooner with the help of Jenny Kwan and the Government of Canada. Let Nanjing Massacre Day be established in our diverse country so that histories from the East will be known as well known as histories from the West. I began with a statement that historical truth matters. I'll end with a statement that love matters more. Truth without love begets war. It is for love of Japan that I seek the tears of Japan. Love, truth, and tears offer a better and more lasting protection than the militarism around the world that threatens us all.
Thank you very much for those very moving words. I'm going to ask next for Dr. Tomo Ozuki to come and speak on behalf of the group Japanese Canadians in support of Nanjing Massacre Commemorative.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tomo Ozuki. I am a member of Japanese Canadian supporting the Nanjing Massacre Commemoration Day. We are a group of Japanese Canadians across Canada, including some prominent Japanese Canadians who experienced World War II internment. We support the Member of Parliament Jenny Kwan's proposal for the National Commemoration December 13 as a day to remember the Nanjing Massacre, which is one of the worst war crimes in human history. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese civilians, POWs, were massacred, and tens of thousands of women and girls were raped by the evil Japanese soldiers. The Nanjing Massacre is a well-researched, documented historical fact. It was registered in the UNESCO Memory of the World in 2015. The Canadian Parliament has recognized 5 genocides that happened outside of Canada. Armenian genocide of 1915, Holodomor from 1932 to 1933, Holocaust from 1933 to 1945, the Rwanda genocide of 1994, and Srebrenica genocide of 1995. The Canadian Museum of Human Rights in Winnipeg details these genocides and states, I quote, "In Canada, people are free to speak openly about human rights abuses. Canadians use this freedom to draw attention to acts of extreme violence and inhumanities around the world. Concerned Canadians have influenced the Parliament to recognize 5 mass atrocities as genocides. Through such official recognition, Canada speaks out as a nation. It exposes and condemns horrific crimes that have been hidden, minimized, or denied." End quote. Our fellow Japanese Canadians fully concur with this statement. Some Canadians with Japanese ancestry are concerned that establishing Nanjing Massacre Commemoration Day in Canada constitutes bashing, demonizing Japan. However, they should remember that Empire of Japan collapsed at the hands of allied nations, including Canada, in 1945, and Japan and its people clearly broke away from Japanese imperialism by adopting the post-war constitution of Japan that renounces wars and respects the human rights of all the people in the world. Therefore, remembering atrocities of Empire of Japan is not demonizing Japan, calling Japan or its people. Canada has tried to redress the past wrongs, such as the residential school system for indigenous children, internment of Ukrainian Canadians during World War I and Japanese Canadians during World War II, and head tax on Chinese immigrants, the inhuman treatment of Indian migrants on Komagatamaru, and the ongoing injustices exemplified by the missing indigenous women and the victims of human trafficking. Whether in the past or present, whether inside or outside of Canada, human rights violations are for all of us to study and remember so that we will not let them happen again. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Next, I call on Dr. Joseph Wong, Canada Alpha.
Thank you very much, Jenny. First of all, I have to thank Jenny for putting so much of time over the last 12 months, traveling across Canada to make sure that this motion passed today. I did not communicate with Jenny, but it happened that 11 years ago, on November 28, I was standing right here, urging the Canadian Parliament to pass a motion urging Japanese government to apologize sincerely to the countrywoman. That was motion 291 raised by Olivia Chow at the time. At 3 o'clock on November 28, 2007, the motion passed unanimously at this particular house, and I hope that history repeats today. Holocaust education and Remembrance Day inspired me a lot. I was very pleased to see that Canada and a lot of Western nations remember the war, because it is only through lessons that we learn from what human beings did, from the mistakes that human beings committed in the past, that war started. And we have to let our younger generation learn from the lessons of the war so that it will not repeat in the future. So this motion, along with the motion 66 that we passed at the Ontario Legislature last year, served the same purpose. Not only that it is a day of remembrance, it has to be a day of learning, a year of learning. We should not deprive our younger generation, this diverse country, the opportunity to learn not only atrocities happen in the West, but those which happen in the East have to take an important position in this diverse country. Your children, my children, and children of Asian language and heritage, they should learn and they should know about what happened in the East. And that is why we are here to support Jenny's motion. And I hope all the MPs, our representatives in the House, would recognize that it is our moral obligation to the citizens of this country that the young people, whether East or West, have to learn atrocities in the world so that history would not repeat itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. I hope in this instance history will repeat itself in the sense of Olivia Chow's motion being passed unanimously in this House. I hope that will happen today with my motion. With that, I'd like to call on David Choi, representing the NCCC, to come and say a word.
Thank you, Jenny. I am David Choi, the National Chair for the National Congress of Chinese Canadians. We are an organization of 280 plus associations across Canada from the Pacific to the Atlantic. Joining me today are co-chairs from coast to coast, Timothy Chiu from Montreal, Eric Yeung from Halifax, and also Mr. Kim Ma from Alberta. I must first say that we have nothing against the Japanese people and those in the Japanese government who are for the preservation of history and those who are working on for peace. The National Conscious Canadians successfully called for the redress of the Chinese head tax in Canada, and the government indeed did apologize and made compensation in 2005 through the Parliament, and the Prime Minister then speaking on behalf of all Canadians. So this year, the National Conscious Canadians on May 26th at its national convention passed an unanimous motion on behalf of all of its 280 plus associations, calling for Canada to support the commemoration of the Nanjing Massacre on an annual basis on December 13th. This is very important. Why is this so? The Nanjing Massacre is really about the mass murder and mass rape of some 800,000 people in 1937 to 1938. It is also known as the Rape of Nanjing, of which some 80,000 women and teenage girls were raped. And yet, today, what we see is that the Japanese government are still honoring some of the military war criminals as heroes in Japan. And history, as we speak, is being taught and whitewashed in Japan. And also, the educational books are being revised to now call the Nanjing Massacre not as a war, but a conflict, an incident of conflict, which has occurred between the Japanese and the Chinese in Nanjing. I believe it is very important for us to redress this. And indeed, amongst us today are descendants of the Nanjing Massacre who are amongst us as Canadians. And so, we must stand together to make sure that history is reconciled and that we stand on the right side of justice. The National Congress of Chinese Canadians call on the MPs today to vote in favor of the motion to make December 13th annually the Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Last but not least, I call on Jerry He, who's from Halifax, to share his story with us.
Thank you, Jenny. My name is Yuanling Hao He, and I'm a Chinese that currently live in Halifax, Nova Scotia with my wife, Michelle Robbins. The fury inside of me when people try to argue with me about the irreparable crime that the Imperial Japanese troops committed to the people in the city that I was born and raised is undeniable. Hundreds of thousands of people killed. Women and girls were brutally raped. I'm a descendant of one of those victims. My grandparents lived in fear and was under threat all the time. Grandma told me that Japanese troops made Grandpa carry and bury the corpse of other Chinese people near the bank of Yangtze River. He himself would have died one day if he hadn't given cigarettes to a Japanese officer in time. My grandma and her cousins painted their face with soot like other young girls, so they won't be noticed by the Japanese soldiers. My family was devastated when my grandma's younger cousin was caught and raped by a Japanese soldier. The impact of the trauma is so great that she later jumped into the well and committed suicide. In reading Japanese soldier Shiro Azuma's published diary when Nanking fell, I discovered that this kind of tragedies happened every day at the time in Nanjing. Today's internet is a hotbed and shelter for all those who still trying to deny the history. Articles and documentary videos that try to deny the massacre are everywhere and in all forms. It was at that moment I realized that Iris Chang, the author of Rape of Nanking, was out of the land while she collected the evidence and compiled them into a book. I dedicated over 7 years' time and my income on collecting the original historical documents in order to restore the fading history. This is not only for the brave Chinese soldier who sacrificed their life for defending Nanjing in 1937, but also for countless dead compatriots dead during the massacre, including my grandparents' younger cousin. I would like to quote words from the book The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang. The rape of Nanking did not penetrate the world's consciousness in the same manner as the Holocaust or Hiroshima, because the victims themselves had remained silent. And I'm here today to help 2 steps to break that silence. Today I brought the original magazines that published from 1937 to 1938 from different countries. These 2 life magazines were from by the United States. This is the London News reporting the rape of Nanking, fall of the city. And Japanese Asahi News reported the fall of Nanking while they are attacking the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Just to add on, Jerry actually spent 7 years of his life in adulthood collecting this information, traveling the world, going to all kinds of garage sales and what have you to look for this material as documentation. And he does that mostly, I think, to show us about a path forward, remember our history, and find a better way forward. That's what this motion is about. This is what today is all about. And along with the community leaders, and there are many of them, I can't name them all one by one, but in total, close to 40,000 Canadians have signed petitions in support of this call for action for the Canadian government to declare December 13th every year as Nanjing Massacre Commemorative Day. So with that, I'd like to call on 2 representatives from the community to come and present the petition so that I may receive them and table them in the House of Commons. And so I'd like to call the representatives from the Canadian Alliance of Chinese Associations, Mr. Yong Tao Chen and also Kim Wai Chen, to please come forward to present the petitions to me. Thank you. Thank you so much. These petitions were collected from coast to coast to coast. Individuals, organizations have spent many, many hours collecting the petitions. I've had 80-year-old seniors coming into my office with a stack of petitions that they themselves had went door to door to collect from individuals. And so I won't name all the individuals who've done this because it will take too much time, but I do want to acknowledge and say thank you to them for their heartfelt effort, and to all of the speakers who shared their words with us today, to all the organizations who signed on. This is an effort. It's not about partisan politics, but rather is about doing what is right for our community and for the future of our world. And it's about connecting all of us through humanity. So with that, I know we're running out of time. I don't know if there are any media questions for us from the media. If not, then we will again thank all of you for coming. And with any luck, 11 years ago, with Olivia Child, former MP Olivia Child, who moved the motion and related to the comfort women, related to the apology. This is really simply just the next phase. Let's recognize this day nationally from coast to coast to coast and learn from that history. So thank you so much.
One more.